Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Welcome to Monday night, the second Monday night of the Carmel Bach Festival. This is our 10th performance day. We have had more than 160 rehearsals so far, and we're up to now about 24, 25 performances. Our ensemble right now numbers 219. That includes all the performers, the production crew, and the administrative staff. I just thought I'd toss those numbers out at you. It is frightening sometimes. It's kind of scary when you're in the middle of it. My name is David Gordon, and I began my association with this festival right in the middle of it as a tenor soloist in 1983. And I've seen it from every possible point of view. And I'm remembering something that Robert Shaw actually said in my presence one time in a performance of the St. Matthew Passion. He said, we were talking about the possibility of mistakes being made in the performance. This piece is so complicated, there are so many potential places to make a mistake that no one person could make them all. You see, it takes a team. That's the way I feel about the Carmel Bach Festival. We have such a great crew, the technical crew. I wear black in honor because I want to be cool like my buddy Jason Mariani, who is just down here working the sound system. I want to be cool like the crew. I'm very happy to welcome you here, and I'm also very happy to welcome what's going on up there in the little balcony above the gymnasium here. This is Studio 105, which used to be the gym when this was the Sunset School. And we're putting it to excellent use, I think, and we probably improved the acoustics quite a bit. But up there is a video camera, and all our lectures this year, and as well as last year, are being streamed live on the internet by Channel 27, ampmedia.org. AMP Media is a video production facility and studio. It's Channel 27 on your dial, and they make their facilities available to civic organizations, government organizations, nonprofits, educational groups, and so forth. And we thank them for partnering with us to video these lectures. I actually have talked with people who are home right now getting dressed on their way to Sunset. I know that this is going on now. And they're up there, he's tying his tie, and they're getting ready to go, and they're watching us here right now. It's a whole new thing, and it means that these lectures can go out and can be also heard later, which for some of the things that we put on here is really great. Certain lectures are kind of timely, and others are timeless. I want to also, before I really start here, mention a new tradition. This is a festival of traditions, and our new tradition, of course, is our Art of Music art raffle, which is in the Marjorie Evans Gallery on the upper patio of Sunset Center. There are more than 125 miniature artworks by regional artists and inspired by the beauty of Carmel, inspired by the excitement of the Bach Festival. You buy a ticket from one of our red-aproned volunteers, one right back there waving, and one right here waving too, and you also get a free ticket if you have purchased a color program book. As I always like to say at this point, I was a winner and you can be a winner too. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. Now tonight, the title of this lecture was going to be Violins Without Borders. We have tonight music by German composer, by Italian composers, and in fact the music by the German composer Johann Sebastian Bach, his orchestral suite is very strongly influenced by the French model, particularly Couperin. I'm sorry, Jean-François Couperin. And I was going to talk about the difference or lack thereof of the different styles. You probably would expect me to explain to you the difference between the Italian Baroque style and the German Baroque style and the French influence. And there are, of course, certain musical traits that seem to reflect the tastes and culture of one nation over another, but drawing true boundaries of musical style is not such a simple matter then as now. Throughout the Baroque era, famous musicians from Italy and Germany and England and France traveled to other countries to learn from famous teachers or to play in orchestras or serve as music masters in church or at court. And as musicians traveled through Europe, they tended to synthesize and fuse styles rather than separate them. And thanks to this pan-European mix of musical culture, various separate influences combined into the art form's first cohesive musical language in the 18th century, and established what musicologists refer to as the common practice period of the 18th and 19th century, when there was a certain musical language that everyone spoke, even though they might speak it with an Italian accent or a French accent or a German accent. And at this point, I was going to talk to you about the Italians, and I was going to talk to you about Bach and Vivaldi and Gimignani and Arcangelo Corelli and even Astor Piazzolla, the Argentinian tango king. And then something happened in the person of our guest artist, who has brought a very special instrument onto the stage this evening. Monday night for a decade and a half has been here at the festival an evening of strings playing on historic instruments. That is, these are either actual 18th century instruments or perhaps earlier, or they are painstakingly replicated modern instruments based on some ancient model. One thing that we have never had at this, in this concert, and one thing that we've never featured on our main stage at the Bach Festival, is a Baroque flute, which is made of wood. And we have today somebody very special as a guest artist with the festival, and I thought it would be much more interesting to hear her, because you can't go onto the internet and Google her as easily as you can Google the names of the composers who are going to be on tonight's concert. She's here live. We don't have to Google. Janet C. is one of today's outstanding performers on Baroque and classic flute. For over 30 years, she has performed as a soloist and in chamber music and as a principal flutist in orchestras throughout North America and Japan. She lived in London for 12 years, and while she was there, she was principal flute for both of Sir John Eliot Gardner's two orchestras. She made many recordings with them. She played principal flute in the Taverner Players, conducted by Andrew Parrott. In North America, she's the principal flute of the Philharmonia Baroque Orchestra under Nicholas McGagan in the Bay Area, and with them she's recorded Vivaldi and Mozart concertos. She also performs frequently with Portland Baroque and is a guest soloist throughout North America. Her discography includes CDs on Deutsche Grammophon, Harmonia Mundi, EMI, Hyperion, and lots of other labels, including Vivaldi concertos and the complete Bach flute sonatas. I could go on, but you probably would rather hear her talk. I will only say that she visits us from her home, where she lives with her husband and son on Bainbridge Island off the coast of Washington, and she has deigned to leave that paradise for this one. So please welcome Janet C., tonight's guest artist. Okay. So we would love for you to demonstrate and then perhaps field questions from the audience and tell us about this instrument, what we should listen for, and what it's all about.
All right. So how many of you have never heard the one-key Baroque flute, just for starters? Very good. Very good. Okay. So I am excited, and I also feel very honored to be the person to introduce this flute to the festival after 75 years, I guess.
Yeah.
This is really an honor. Because after having began my studies on the modern flute at Oberlin, my flute teacher, Robert Willoughby, this was back in the 70s, he went off on sabbatical my junior year and studied the Baroque flute himself in Europe. And when he came back for my senior year, he brought Baroque flutes, and I really fell in love with them. And so after having started on the modern flute, this is the flute that I've played ever since. Still playing a little bit of modern flute, but so this is the type of flute for which Bach composed all of his music. It's very different, isn't it? It's called the one-key Baroque flute. It's not because it plays only one key, but because it just has the one key. And Handel and Telemann, all the composers of the 18th century, this was the type of flute they were composing for. It's very, very different. This particular flute was made in Germany a couple years ago by Martin Venner. It's made out of boxwood and artificial ivory here. Has just the one key, very small hole to blow in, and then 6 finger holes and 1 under the key. It's a conical bore, which is different from the modern flute. It tapers at the end. The woods, boxwood is a common wood, also ebony, grenadilla, ivory, glass sometimes. Yeah, there's an amazing collection of flutes in the Dayton Miller collection in Washington, D.C., and there's a glass flute. So let me just play a little bit for you so you can get the sound of it in your ear. I should say, too, that tonight we're playing at a half step lower in pitch. So my A is 415, whereas modern A is A 440. So not only is the sound of the flute more mellow, softer, wooden, warm, but it's also half step lower, which contributes to that. Here we go. So it's a very soulful instrument. Also can be, quite spirited when it leaps around, as in the Badinerie, which is the last movement of the suite tonight. One of the big differences is that your modern flute is made. In fact, the goal in the design of the modern flute is so that all of the notes are homogeneous, note to note, half step to half step. The colors are more or less similar, and the strengths and strengths of the notes are equal. And because the design of this instrument is quite primitive, it's simply not possible. So listen to the differences between the strong notes and the weak notes on this instrument. Here's a B. Hear that?
And they naturally occur that differently.
Yep.
You're not doing anything to make them different.
Nope. They naturally occur that way because of the fingering that I have to use. I don't have keys, so it's basically what I'm doing. If I play an A, then an A flat, what I'm doing basically is just lowering the A until it becomes an A flat by adding more fingers. So. So, and also there are funny things like the fifth hole on the flute. This is the venting hole for the F natural and also the F sharp. So it's a great compromise when the builder makes the flute. If he carves out too much wood in that hole, the F sharp will be higher, but the F will also be too high. So we have, which is normally a bit flat, so I have to bring it up. And then, which is normally a bit sharp, so I have to bring it down. So the size, the undercutting, etc. of that hole is very, very crucial. So it's not a perfect instrument, but it has all of these colors, which when you study this flute for a long time, you really come to enjoy. And when you go back to modern flute, you find yourself kind of making all sorts of colors that don't really want to be there.
May I interrupt?
Yes.
That I noticed, and I want to be sure everyone understands that when you said you made the note go down, you actually lowered your head a little bit and changed the angle, and you actually raised your head a little bit and opened the flute to make it go up.
Right. I have to expose more of the blowhole to raise the pitch, and to lower it, I have to cover more of the blowhole. So I have to. And I have to raise my eyebrows, and that helps a lot. and blow less and all sorts of things. Of course, when you're speeding along and you have to make these corrections, you just do a bit. You do what you can. The other thing is, because there are no keys, some of the trills are not Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there is. I think the
Except
fact that it's wood,
it's wood.
it's
Yeah.
wood is responsible mostly for that similarity. It's blown this way, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I think probably it might be more similar to the recorder. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. That's a good question. He
The question was Mozart. Yeah.
the weak notes that I played for you, those were the notes that got the keys, basically. And so in the late 18th century, you had a G sharp key, you had a B flat key, you had an F key. So that was the period where keys were being added to the flute so that the quality within the instrument was more homogeneous, and there was a little bit more brightness to the sound. When I play Mozart now, I play it on the 6-key flute. And that seems to work very well. I have no doubt that this flute played Mozart as well in the end of the 18th century. No doubt whatsoever. I'm sure this flute played Mozart. It wasn't, there was not a dividing line, I don't believe, where, the 1-key flute was no longer played. And it was what people had. It was, probably depended upon location in Europe. You can definitely play Mozart on the 1-key flute very satisfactorily. In fact, sometimes when I play the 6-key flute, I'll use Baroque flute fingerings to get the color, of a special color on a dissonant note or something. Because the key, for example, on a G sharp, the key will make that G sharp as bright as the A. And I don't want it as bright as the A. I want it to be darker and kind of tense. So I'll actually revert back to using the Baroque flute fingerings. Mm.
Questions?
Is the modern flute that's meant to play like a Baroque flute better than a really, really old Baroque flute?
You mean a reproduction of a, yeah. Oftentimes, yes. Yeah, because a lot of time, because you're always blowing warm air into the flute, and so the bore is expanding and contracting and expanding and contracting and cracking sometimes. Yeah, sometimes the instruments in the museums they've had too much expanding and contracting, and the bore has changed, and sometimes along the way, people have, taken their penknife and kind of. So it's true, yeah. A lot of times, a reproduction is a better flute, and also you can, as the flute's being made, you can work with the maker and say, the F is too high for me. Can you, put some wood back in that hole or something. There are several makers in this country. There are makers all over the world who go to the museums and take the measurements. There's one up in Mendocino called Rod Cameron, who's a Scotsman, started his career making as a tool maker for Rolls-Royce engines in Glasgow. Very precise maker.
Yeah. Any other questions, please?
It was the tone. It was the.
What was it that you initially experienced with this wooden instrument that made you want to switch from metal to wood?
It was the tone. It was the warmth of tone. It was the fact that you can feel the air under your fingers. Also, I was always drawn to the Baroque repertoire. I did not bond with a lot of the fantastically technical 19th century French music. I always liked the Baroque repertoire. And so the flute, when the flute was placed in my hands, I thought, this is a good match. And I'm very grateful to Bob Willoughby. I mean, if you think about it, he played with the Cleveland Symphony in the 50s, early 60s, I think. He was, very high-powered modern flute teacher at a very good conservatory of music, and he chose in a sabbatical to go to Europe to study, the 1-key Baroque flute with a fellow called Franz Fester. And it was because he was, curious still and experimental. I'm playing the Baroque flute. I'm very grateful to him.
Yes. Weather, temperature, humidity.
It does, yeah. The flute does not like dry, low humidity. It likes a lot of humidity. I once played in Santa Fe. It was very high and very dry. And the flute, I swear, it was a quarter step sharp all the time. It just was not happy. And also, what happens is that the joints will, they'll if it's too dry, they will shrink. And so the flute kind of rattles around. You have to add more thread, which is a nice thing about the thread. You can just add more thread and still have a solid joint. But you have to be careful. You have to make sure that you clean it out so it doesn't get too wet. If you fly, you have to wrap it in a plastic bag so whatever moisture is in the flute stays in the flute. It's tricky. I had a terrible experience in Paris because I'd bought a 4-key original flute by William Henry Potter, and it was a cold winter in Paris, and it was very dry in the apartment where I was living, and I played it a bit, put it on the piano, and then I heard this. I thought, oh. Mm-hmm. And it had cracked, right down the head. Yeah, that's not a sound.
That actually happened. In the 1990s, we had a wonderful Swiss oboist here named Bernard Heinrich. And that happened to him on stage in Old Sunset Center during a concert because of the draft. There was a sound of a little tiny cap pistol.
Yeah.
And the look on Bernard's face was pretty awful.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It is.
It's amazing how touchy they are.
Oh yeah. It's like the gut strings, on the Baroque violins too. They're very sensitive to the humidity and dryness.
Yes, one more.
Bring up Mozart again. No doubt you've played a million times his concerto for flute and harp.
Oh yeah.
Do you always use a modern flute for that?
No, 6-key flute. The 6-key flute. So my particular 6-key flute. It's ebony, has 6 keys. It has the G sharp, the B flat, the short F, long F, C key, and the pitch that we have these days settled on for that period of music is A430. So it's between the Baroque pitch and the modern pitch.
Could you play a little bit of the opening of the second movement?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. We have to let our beloved guest get upstairs and get into her concert duds, but isn't this great?
This is it.
Oh, this is, all right. Then you're set. Can you stay here then until about 3 minutes to 8?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. No, I really want to thank you so much
my
for
pleasure.
coming here and being here with us. And this is just so wonderful to
hear
have
it.
you come in here and really show us
Yeah.
so that we can truly appreciate what's going to happen out there
Yeah.
tonight. And now we know who you are.
Yeah,
And so we've already met you. Thank you. Thank you. This is a great thrill for me because personally this is my favorite instrument to sing with. I've been associated with the Bach Festival of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania as long as I've been associated with this one. And they came to me back in the 80s and said that they were making several recordings and they would like to make a recording of me singing arias, and what would I like to do? What a great question. And I said, I want to do a CD of Bach tenor arias with flute. And that's what the CD is called. It's on Dorian Records, and it's a modern flute, and I wish now we could go back and do it all over again with Janet and her wooden flute. This was a very special thing. We thank her, and now we know who she is. When she walks on stage, she's a real person for us with a real personality, and we've connected with her, and I'm grateful to her, and I hope you had a good time with this. I will be here tomorrow night talking to you about my 2 new best friends, Hazel and Dean. And if you don't know who they are, you will by the end of tomorrow night. I hope to see you all at the lecture and at the concert. It's a big chunk of my heart that I'm putting out into the Bach Festival this year. Thanks so much. I'll see you tomorrow.